And to annoy Allie, he says, "There's no substitute for personal reconnoitre."
Reconnoiter. Oh my god. Yeah, I hate that word. Nobody uses it. Who fucking talks like that?
Word. Nobody.
Hey, Sarah, you want to reconnoiter at the coffee shop? No.
Perhaps I could use this as an excuse to go to those far-off planets with little polka-dotted people if necessary, and be able to talk about love, war, nature, God, sex, all those things that go to make up the excitement of the human condition.
This is Captain Jean-Luc Picard.
Welcome aboard.
Jean-Luc Picard to the Starship Enterprise.
You want to review your rapid progress?
That nonsense is centuries behind us. To the Starship Enterprise.
Oh, yeah?
And it's enough, damn it!
Tempo, mon capitan.
To the Starship Enterprise.
But you can't deny that you're still a dangerous, savage child race.
Of the planet Earth.
You just don't get it, do you, Jean-Luc? That is the exploration that awaits you. Not mapping stars and studying nebula, but charting the unknown possibilities of existence.
Nook neck, and welcome to Humanist Trek. It's a comedy Star Trek podcast about humanism in Star Trek. I'm Sarah Ray.
And I'm Allie Ashmead.
And this is your last call. If you're hearing this on the day it releases, we will be waiting for you in Omaha, Nebraska at QuadCon. Again, visit humanisttrek.com, click on events to get all the details of that. We hope to see a lot of people there.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, so last night I started packing up all of our stuff, all the merch that we take with us and the displays and all of that shit. We have to bring our own tables. It's going to be a whole thing. And so I'm getting all the things piled up and realizing very quickly that I'm too old for this shit. Like, this is a lot.
I'm so weird. Like, during the week, at night, I cannot be arsed to go to bed at a decent time. Even though I got to be up at 6:30, I've got a call at 7 or whatever, I will stay up until 2. But what am I doing on a Friday night? What do? I go to bed early.
Oh,
I don't know why I do that, but I go to bed early. And then I'm like, man, I'm getting old. I don't look forward to going out on Friday night. I don't want to do shit. And then I could not wake up. Saturday, I woke up a little bit at 7 when the sun came up, and then I went back to sleep, and I kept trying to I knew it was late, but I couldn't get up. And next thing I know, it's noon. I slept hard. I'm getting old. Getting old sucks.
Getting old sucks. Well, if only there was a magic herb and drug cocktail you could take to make yourself young again. Like we do this week in Star Trek The Next Generation. Season 1, Episode 16, Too Short a Season.
Commander, you'll soon be getting an intruder alert.
What? I've got something, sir.
Intruder alert, sir.
It's an old-style starship, sir. Constellation class, heading this way under impulse com.
Number 1, kindly take charge of our guests until we have time to decide what we're going to do with them. Sir? Number 1, keep them out of my way.
This episode starts off with a hostage video, and they really try to get right into the action on this episode, but I couldn't help but quibble. Picard has this admiral on the phone. He's like 500 years old or some shit. He looks like they saved the old age makeup from DeForest when he was in the first episode.
And they put it all on him.
Mm-hmm.
Like every piece of hair, just every piece of latex, all on his face.
The setup here is that Picard is playing this video that Starfleet received for the Admiral, as if he hadn't seen it. Wouldn't an Admiral be more well briefed than the captain?
And can't you just send it to him?
Yeah, sure. Forward the email.
Yeah, like in the time the same technology you're using to call the fucking Admiral, send it to him.
Anyway, get over it, Sarah.
I know. We're quibbling.
So what had happened was this planet, Morden 4, just finally achieved peace after a 40-year civil war. But Karnas, the governor of Morden 4...
Karnas.
They say it like 3 different ways in this episode, too. Karnas, the governor, sent a message because some terrorists have taken the Federation ambassador and his staff hostage, and they refuse to negotiate with anyone other than Admiral Mark Jameson, because 45 years ago, he negotiated a hostage situation here. So he's got some experience with this. You have 6 days to deliver Jameson, or we're going to start killing hostages. Karnas is played by Michael Pataki, who we've seen before.
That name sounds familiar.
As Korax in The Trouble with Tribbles. He was a Klingon.
Okay. No, I wouldn't have known. I was thinking he was maybe on PC The Action, but no.
So the D is going to beam over Admiral and Mrs. Jameson for an Uber mission to Morden 4. And in the transporter room, Picard and Riker greet them, and surprise, Admiral Jameson is wheelchair bound.
He's in one of those Captain Pike style wheelchairs.
This prop is fucking spectacular. Never mind the fact that there are stairs up to the transporter, by the way. So nothing on the starship is fucking ADA compliant. So just get over that right away.
How are they going to get him down?
That's what I'm saying.
That's a good point.
But this thing looks like a seat off the bridge, right? And it's that tan leather that looks like it belongs in a station wagon. And it even has like this wood paneling down the side.
Like, that's so 80s.
And Jameson wants to make it very clear before we start this episode, he is in command of the mission and the away team. Picard, you can be commander of the ship or whatever, but this is my mission.
And Picard, you can tell on his face, he doesn't like it, but he respects the chain of command, and he's like, yes, sir, of course.
Well, number one, let's go and welcome the Admiral aboard.
Admiral Jameson is played by Clayton Rohner, who has had a long career. Marsha Hunt plays Anne Jameson, and she might be best known for playing Mary Bennett in the 1940 Pride and Prejudice, one of the Bennett sisters.
Didn't see that, but I definitely recognize him. He's been on like every B movie from the 80s and 90s. He plays both a bad guy and a good guy, and he was on every freaking movie.
Did you also accidentally type Mordor when you were trying to type Morden? I did that.
No.
I did that more often than I like to admit.
No, but I kept typing Karnak.
Oh yeah,
the great Karnak.
Mhm.
Isn't that his name? The guy with the turban.
Yeah.
Reads your mind, reads your fortune. The great Karnak. I think that's. I don't know.
Searching.
Karnak the Magnificent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kept saying Karnak.
Karnak has answered a 100-yard dash.
And now the question.
That's right. Now the question. What happens after you eat a 100-yard prune?
On the bridge, another call from Morden, and when they answer the phone, Karnas is like, damn, you're old.
I know. He's like, dang, the years have not been kind to you. I forget what they said. He was in his 80s,
Mm-hmm.
but he was like super, super decrepit.
Yeah. And we find out why later. Karnas basically repeats what we heard on the voicemail from earlier, but he adds now that the terrorists insist on negotiations being held in person on Morden.
They only want to speak to Jameson. And so Jameson accepts the conditions, and they cut off the phone call there. But Deanna senses that there's something not quite right. Karnas is holding back.
Doesn't every third Star Trek episode start with Deanna on a phone call going, I don't know that we should trust this guy?
I know.
It's just too convenient to have a telepath on board.
Yeah. Jameson thinks that maybe it's because he doesn't want to admit that he can't handle the situation, and maybe that's what it is that she's sensing.
Another thing here, Riker's like, for the HBIC on this planet, he sure doesn't know much. But Jameson kind of like read between the lines, and he's like, well, we do know now that the terrorists are desperate enough to kill, but willing to talk, just not to Karnas.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about other people calling Bill number one? Because the Admiral does that in this scene, and it felt very weird to me.
Instead of calling him Commander Riker?
Yeah, or Riker or whatever, the Admiral calls him number one. He's Picard's number one.
I don't know. I didn't notice. You know what I mean? I didn't notice.
Yeah. Crusher calls up. She's got a series of tests loaded up for the Admiral.
He's like, what? Tests? What is that all about?
And she's like, well, it's just a routine medical checkup, But I don't believe that for a minute. Nobody else has had to do this.
I know. We have talked about this where they let people on the ship and they don't put them through
They do
some
nothing
sort of,
with them.
and that's how they get all the fucking diseases, like
Yep.
naked time and naked now.
And the bird flu.
And right. Chlamydia, chlorofluorochlamydia.
Xenopolychlamydia.
Attention, if you or a loved one has been diagnosed with xenopolychlamydia, you may be entitled to financial compensation. Xenopolychlamydia is a rare sexually transmitted disease linked to exposure in the Orion system. Traveling to the Orion system may put you at risk. Please don't wait. Call 1-920-550-TREK. A free legal consultation and financial information packet. Xenopolychlamydia patients, call now. Again, that number is 920-550-TREK.
I can't believe I remembered that.
One of us was going to remember it.
Oh, God.
But yeah, I thought it was strange that they wanted to do it here.
And then Picard's like, well, Beverly, it'll have to wait a minute because we're all going to gather in the ready room to talk to the Admiral some more. Because I guess that's more important. So this discussion centers on why the terrorists would insist on Jameson being the one.
They make more references to him being old. Riker's like, I don't know how they would know that you're still available. You mean not dead?
So they wonder, is there something Karnas is unable or unwilling to give these terrorists? And right away they assume it's probably weapons. Well, if it's weapons you want, call up old Ronnie Reagan and make a great old deal. America is always giving weapons to one or more likely both sides in conflicts.
Right.
In wars. So in the Jamesons' quarters, Anne is unpacking their suitcases when Mark rolls in, and they have a conversation about how great it is to be back on the bridge of a ship. The old, paper-pushing admiral misses the action of space exploration trope. So then he gets himself out of his wheelchair and into a nearby chair in the room, but it's obvious that this is painful and difficult, and then he starts having fits. Grabs his sides, doubles over in pain, and she's like, I'm going to call 911, but he grabs her by the arm and tells her not to. And then he straight up lies about his last doctor's appointment. Oh yeah, everything was fine. They said I'm getting better or whatever, nothing to worry about here. Speaking of lying, Dr. Crusher is in Picard's ready room because Jameson gave her copies of his medical records from 2 months ago and lied to her and said they were from 2 weeks ago.
Picard chalks it up as, maybe he's just, he's 85. That's where he's only 85, which I've seen 85-year-olds. They don't look like this.
Nope.
And maybe it's memory, She's like, no, he has something called Iverson's disease, and it affects his body, not his mind.
And that explains why he is 500-year-old looking,
right,
but only 85 is probably this disease.
So he just wants to make sure that Crusher is available in case the guy does fucking croak.
Here's another uncomfortable Star Trek moment. Bev's got a gut feeling that he's hiding something, and Picard straight up dismisses her. He's like, because, that's something I would expect Troy to say, talking about gut feelings and shit. Like Bev can't feel things and be right about them.
Yeah.
Don't do toxic masculinity, Picard. Please. Meanwhile, the Admiral is at an aft bridge station with Worf, and he's got the chair is sat sideways to the console, and he's leaning out the side of it, trying to poke buttons. Why isn't this place ADA compliant? My God.
And then Picard asks him if he'd like to take the con. So he decides to get out of his chair, and they're all holding their breath as they watch him struggle out of his chair and then walk down and almost falling to get to Geordi's station. Geordi gets up and lets him have his station. But they're still surprised that he can even get up and walk at all. And he mentions, well, yeah, I've had some therapy, and it seems to be working. He hasn't felt this good since the last time he was in space.
Yeah, he goes on again reminiscing about his days gallivanting around the cosmos, and now being motivated to leave that wheelchair by the thought of commanding a starship again. Of course, this assignment at the con is just temporary, Don't worry about your ship, Picard. I'm not going to take it over or anything. But it's clear that he's really missing the glory days, and I know that feeling.
Well, Admiral, quite a little surprise you've pulled on us.
Yes, quite.
Picard and Crusher go into the ready room for a private conversation about her frustration. This is a private conversation.
A private conversation
about our frustration. She knows something's up because he's got Iverson's disease. There's no cure for it. There's no therapy for it. And nobody's ever been known to go into remission.
He should never have been able to walk again. And yet,
Ever.
We just saw him get out and walk across the bridge. Yeah.
Right. And so Picard asks Crusher to do some digging. Back in the Jameson quarters, Jameson is watching the old replay of Karnak's recording.
The hostage tape is just on repeat.
His wife comes in, and he's walking.
He almost leaps out of that chair to go, like, dry hump her.
And she's like, what the fuck? Like, how are you walking? But then she gets suspicious because not only is he walking, he looks 20 years younger.
Yeah, he's like trying to chase her to bed, and they move into the light where it's a little brighter in the cabin because he was sitting in the dark.
Ew.
And now we see that he does look a lot younger, like 20 years younger. Not nearly as much ham on the face anymore. But as Anne starts to grill him about what the hell is going on here, he starts having fits again and collapses. And this time, Anne makes it to the phone to call 911.
Yep. And so they cut to sickbay where Crusher has already examined him and done some blood work. She's scouring Google to see if she can find some alien references to substances that she found in his blood. But all she can say is he's taken something that's affecting his body.
It's changing his cellular structure. His DNA is skewed, whatever that means, and he looks younger. And the biggest surprise of all, that disease that's incurable, Iverson's disease, he doesn't have it now.
You can't just go ingesting hydrochloroquine and bleach and a bleach cocktail and think that that's going to fucking cure your disease.
So we have a lot of questions at this point, but not very many answers. Speaking of answers, Picard drops by the Jamesons' quarters, and Mark looks even younger now. And Mark puts all his cards on the table in an evil monologue.
Doofenshmirtz Evil Incorporated!
He's been planning this ever since he got that diagnosis. He negotiated a treaty on a planet in the Cerebus system, which has some native process that rejuvenates the body, real fountain of youth kind of place, which Picard rightly dismisses as a myth. But it's true, except that it's super risky, very high mortality rate, and very painful. And he's like, I got enough for both. I got enough for both of us, Annie.
But when he found out that he was gonna come to the Enterprise, he took both doses. He's like, fuck Annie, I'm taking her dose too.
His decision was, I got to test it on myself first to see if it'll work. Because if I die, well, I'm just a wheelchair-bound invalid. And Anne's like, but you're my wheelchair-bound invalid. Like, she loves him. No matter his physical health, she loved the person inside.
Right, but he also feels like, he's been a burden to her for the last 4 years, and she's had to take care of him. So
Yeah, that's hard. This prescription is a slow intake of herbs and drugs over 2 years, but yeah, he took it all at once.
It's kind of like when you have an edible and you eat a little bit and you're
Yes.
like, I don't feel anything. then you fucking eat the whole brownie,
Mhm.
and then you're walking down Chambers Road naked. Naked and don't remember how you got there.
Oh my God.
I've not done that. I have not done that. I'm just saying.
Picard gives Mark the first duty of every Starfleet officer dress down. Like, your selfish bullshit put not just your life at risk, but this mission too. And Picard leaves them to hash this out. And Mark tries to argue, like, Anne, I did this for you too. But she feels that it was a very selfish act. He didn't even ask her or talk to her about it. He was doing this shit in secret. But the scene ends with a very uncomfortable moment as he tries to embrace her and she pushes him off and storms off, I guess, to the bedroom. We're not really sure. And then he storms off into the hallway. This scene brushed up against the do we put a sexual assault content warning on the episode to me, because he was all up on her.
Yeah. I don't know what that was trying to show. I don't know what
he's
they
young
were.
and virile, and he's like, Annie, let's go fuck. I can do it again, you know?
Is that what young and virile is?
I guess. For men, yes. Yeah. For men in our society, yes.
Okay, yeah, that's about right.
Unfortunately.
In the observation lounge, Jameson is sitting in the dark, and I love they've done such great shots with the shadows to kind of obscure his face so that we know something's happening with his appearance, but it just leads to this like ominous reveal. He asked Data to open up a channel to Karnak. I'm just gonna call him Karnak.
And Picard overhears this request, and he's like, I'd like to know the purpose of this phone call. And when the Admiral's like, well, I want to ask more questions about, what Karnas's dealings with the terrorists have been so far. Picard's like, well, hang on. I thought you said he'd be like sensitive about being a failure when it comes to this particular topic. Is it wise to push those buttons? And you can tell Mark is just getting annoyed.
Yeah, he's like, I'm the one who's negotiating, not you.
This is my mission. Ultimately, Picard agrees to let this call go through and suggests a secure channel. And on the phone, Jameson gets Karnak to reveal the truth. There are no dissidents. There are no terrorists. Karnak has the hostages, and this is a white whale of revenge plot to get Jameson back there to negotiate again, just like 45 years ago, but this time he's going to ask a very high price. And if Jameson refuses, the hostages will die the most painful of deaths. I have a question. If you're Picard, you have every right to eavesdrop on this phone call, right?
I was going to say that. Like, this is your ship. You should be eavesdropping.
Fuck yeah.
But he didn't.
When the Admiral returns to the bridge, he orders Geordi to jump to Warp 8 and arrive ahead of schedule, catch him off guard. And he tells Picard he believes Karnak has the hostages and all of that, and negotiation is no longer an option.
He says he's not at liberty to say how he knows that, but we know it's from the phone call. And he's going to personally lead the away mission with Picard's people.
He's going to go in there and get them hostages.
What if I refuse?
Then the hostages will die.
There is a very stark visual communication at the top of Act 3 that really signals a change in the power dynamic, I thought. Admiral Jameson is now sitting in the big chair with Picard in Riker's seat and Riker on the other side.
That feels terrible.
Yeah.
Like someone coming into your house and just taking over and walking in there acting like they own the place.
Mm-hmm.
Going in and fucking your wife. You know what I mean? Walking into your house, fucking your wife. But he asks Data to bring up some plans on the view screen of the tunnels beneath the city. Apparently, there's some tunnels, and that's where he thinks that Karnak is holding the hostages. The same thing that he did like 45 years ago. And an armed raid is the only option. So that's why they're going to go in there shooting. He's not even going to bother to negotiate.
Picard tries to argue like nobody else has even heard Karnak's demands. Maybe this armed rescue operation isn't the best solution. Like, let's talk this out. But the Admiral is too hard about doing another mission to think very clearly.
At this point, he's like kind of throwing his weight around. He's like, yeah, I'm going to use your crew and I'm going to use them as I see fit. And like, hang on, those are my people.
This next scene, at first, I thought it was going to be like Stitch and Bitch, because Beverly and Deanna are down in sickbay talking with Anne. And so I initially it felt like, oh, let's put all the women characters together and, do some tropey thing with that.
Oh, how could he do this to me? Blah, blah, blah. And then they
Yes.
would be like, yes, honey, you're stroking her hair.
Yep, fuck
Yeah,
men.
girl.
Mm-hmm, right.
Yeah, men suck.
Yeah. But they didn't do that. That's not what's happening at all. I was very surprised to find. But they're trying to convince her, like, some of it is because they're like, oh, he's still the same man. He still loves you, you know. But she's like, no, this is bullshit. I was looking forward to retirement together, and now he gets to be young and gallivant around the cosmos again while I sit here and be what? Be old? And they're like, well, actually, see, he OD'd on that Fountain of Youth prescription, so he's probably not going to make it.
And then they cut over to the observation lounge again. And once again, I think it's in the middle of the night. And Jameson is sitting there again with the shadows, just excellent work on the shadows, completely hiding his face. Picard comes in.
He's going to go stand at his favorite window and look out at the stars.
And then he turns the chair around, and then Picard is surprised to see him there, but he's like now 30 years old. He's super young. Picard doesn't show as much surprise as I would think, but because they know what's happening now. But he wants to know, like, why is this so important to you? Maybe it's not just the thinking about the mission that has you up, but maybe you're rethinking something. Like, what are you hiding?
Picard tries to get some answers, and after some pressure, Jameson recounts for him the official account of what happened all those years ago. The Mordenites had some sophistication, but were still ruled by tribal family units. Karnak's father was the ruling chief of one family, and another tribe had him assassinated. So Karnak seized the passengers of a Starliner and held them hostage, demanding that Starfleet provide him with weapons that would allow him to defeat this rival family. Officially, the story is that after 2 other mediators were murdered, Jameson went in and negotiated the deal of a lifetime. It's a great deal to bring out the hostages. We're going to release the hostages. And Picard's like, oh, hang on, are you saying that's not true? You said that's the official story, because the first duty of every Starfleet officer is to the truth. But Mark's solution was a unique take on the old Prime Directive.
The Prime Directive. How often have you broken it?
See, the Prime Directive has many different functions.
The Prime Directive?
There's more what you'd call guidelines than actual rules.
It's a very interesting proposition. Let me think it over.
Everything is up for interpretation.
Jameson's like, are you familiar with Iran-Contra? He not only provided the weapons Karnak was demanding, but he provided exactly the same to the other side. Keep the playing field level and let them figure it out on their own. But instead of figuring their shit out, they spiraled into 40 years of civil war. Instead of saving 63 hostages, Jameson caused millions to die. And between starting that civil war and lying to Starfleet about it, Jameson is looking to kind of vindicate himself in some way by extracting these hostages by force. No deals, Howie.
No deal!
Yeah, he's felt guilty for 40-some years about this, and he's hoping that somehow he can vindicate himself. I mean, what's done is done, but this is about him.
In the transporter room, Jameson is preparing to beam down with Tasha, Data, Geordi, and Worf, and should they fail, next week's episode is going to be very strange without them. Picard tells Jameson his place is on the bridge. And when Jameson reminds Picard that he's in command of the away team, Picard's like, fine, then I'll go with you. And Riker's like, wait, guys, Captain, that conversation, we just had this conversation. We don't let the captain beam down anymore, remember? And in Admiral 2, what TOS bullshit is this anyway?
He's going anyway. He steps on the transporter and he tells Riker that he's in command, and off the way they go.
I gave Karnas the weapons he wanted. You did what? I gave exactly the same weapons to his rivals.
So they beam down to those tunnels.
Lots of space grate in the ceiling again.
Lots of concrete. It looks like a big old oversized sewage tunnel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And based on his memory, he thinks that they've landed, like, that's exactly where they want to be. That's underneath the governor's residence. But that's not what Data's showing on his tricorder.
Jameson says, well, your tricorder must be wrong, Data. I know these tunnels like the back of my hand. And he turns the corner and smacks his head on a low beam. Data's proven correct very quickly as they come to a dead end that he had pointed out on the schematics. And Geordi's visor indicates this is steel plast and was fairly recently installed. But Tasha and Worf are able to cut through it with their heaters. But before they go through the hole, Tasha's like, if you know where the hostages are, why don't we just beam over there? But now Jameson's like, oh, they may not be in the same place. And to annoy Allie, he says, there's no substitute for personal reconnoitre.
Reconnoiter. Oh my god. If I was French, it would be reconnaître, but I don't even think that's a word in French. But whatever. Yeah, I hate that word. Nobody uses it. Who fucking talks like that?
Word. Nobody.
Hey, Sarah, you want to reconnoiter at the coffee shop? No.
Oh, God. On the other side of this hole, Geordi picks up some infrared beams, like alarm triggers around the diamond in the.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. I was thinking
James Bond film or something. Yeah,
Mission Impossible. I'm thinking of Tom Cruise falling down from the ceiling on the string and almost hitting the floor, trying to avoid the laser tripwires. Just as Picard says, "Set phasers to stun," somebody fires at them, and so they now all have to take cover. And there's a bunch of these soldiers in blue. There's like 20 of them shooting at them, and then so they take cover and dive out of the way.
Except for Admiral fucking Hero, who just stands up and like takes aim, and Worf is like, "You dumbass," and jumps him to knock him over as it saves him from a heater blast.
Tasha kills a couple, and then Jameson clutches his chest like he's having a heart attack. He's in pain. They think he's hit, but he's not hit. And Picard is going to have to beam all of them right back out of there.
There's a fun comedy bit here where Data, first of all, Data's stunt guy. I know we don't like him for whatever that reason was, but Data's stunt guy. Remember the double that played Lore?
Yeah,
that was the whole thing. I don't know if that was the same guy or not, but
yeah.
Surely it would be. Data's stunt guy gets a fun roll, like he tuck and roll through heater fire from one side of the room to the other to tell Picard that these heaters that these people have, they're set to kill. And Picard's like, he's so good. He's like, yes, thank you, Data. I have heard the sound before.
That is literally the only comedy in this entire episode. So they beam back up, and back on the bridge, Picard enters the bridge, and he's just come back from sick bay to report that Jameson's body is so fucked. Just then, Karnak calls him again and says, I know that somebody was in my tunnels. I know that there was an armed intrusion in my tunnels, and I know it was Jameson. This smells like Jameson.
You got 10 minutes to beam his ass down here, or we start killing hostages.
But Picard tells him, look, he's really ill, and Karnak doesn't believe him or doesn't even give a shit.
Picard gets called down to sickbay immediately, where we find Jameson on a bio bed and Troy comforting Anne at his bedside. And he pleads with Picard to let him go, basically give himself over to Karnak. Another call from the planet, 5 minutes and hostages die, and then one every 15 minutes after that. So Picard tells Riker to relay the message, we're going to come down. And Riker's like, wait, again, I thought we talked about this. We are not going anywhere, Captain. Get your ass back to the bridge.
This time, it's just Picard and Jameson, and he asks Crusher to come along.
And Karnak's like, who is this kid, and where is Jameson?
Their phasers are set on kill. Thank you, Mr. Data. I have heard the sound before.
Karnak is completely incredulous that this is his old nemesis. He assumes this is some kind of trick that Picard is trying to pull, and he goes on a tear about how he wants to show Jameson what happened after he left. The bombed-out cities, the old men with battle scars, graves of young soldiers, all Jameson's fault. But to help convince Karnak that this is Jameson, Picard pulls out a digital camera and proceeds to flip through the photographs they've taken of Jameson at each stage in his makeup de-aging process. And he still seems skeptical. So then they beam Mrs. Jameson down, and she goes to her dying husband to comfort him as he launches into another fit. And Picard asks Karnak that how much of this war and death wasn't Jameson's fault, but yours. You had the weapons. You chose to use them. You didn't even try peace talks. Now you want revenge, but all that's left of this sad admiral, Sadmiral, is to give himself up to you. He just came here to try to somehow make amends for this dumb decision he made all those years ago. And Karnak still doesn't believe them.
I guess back in the day, they did some sort of blood cut thing, back, when you spit on your hand.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this time they cut themselves on their wrists and did some sort of blood oath, and he showed him the scar.
Jameson's like, I'm going to tell you some things that only the real Jameson would know. You told me that the old Parator had ordered your father's assassination. You told me you wanted weapons to destroy him. You didn't want peace. This wasn't about peace at all. You wanted vengeance for the death of your father. And you also have this birthmark on your... You have this birthmark on your dick.
Who was that, Michael Jackson?
Blanket! Oh, my beautiful blanket!
What's wrong with his face? Be cool, dude. I think maybe he's a burn victim or something.
So then Karnak is like, well, if you're Jameson, then you have that scar. So let's see the scar. And sure enough, now he's convinced. And he grabs a heater off the wall, intending to kill Jameson with one of the weapons he sold to him that started this whole thing.
He's like, die like the scum you are. This was his revenge. But then he decided, no. Like, seeing him in pain and screaming, and this was more of revenge than him dying.
Anne holds him and tells him she will always love him. And he says, Annie with the golden hair. And she's like, well, it's gray now, actually. But he says he only sees the gold as he dies in her arms.
Oh my God! They've killed
Admiral Mark Jameson.
you, bastards!
And as Anne weeps for her husband, Karnak says he's ready to release the hostages and cooperate fully.
And that's all he wanted, was just for Jameson to die.
Yeah.
Wow.
Chair Chat is a little dark this week as Picard reports that the hostages are free and unharmed. Jameson's body was buried here on Morden at the request of Anne and with the permission of Karnak. I thought that was weird.
That is weird.
I still think burying people is weird in general, and I would think that by Star Trek, we would have done away with that. We would have figured out how to throw them into the transporter and reconstitute my atoms into something more useful.
Dirt. Be some dirt or something.
Right, yeah. Picard says that the quest for youth, like resistance, is futile. Age and wisdom have their graces too. Riker wonders if one doesn't have to have age and wisdom to appreciate that fact. Off we go to the next adventure.
Boy, I'm sure glad that's over with.
I'll be glad to be relieved of this cargo.
Me too.
It is done, and perhaps just as well.
Yeah, but I learned something today.
I sincerely hope that this is the last time that I find myself here.
You just don't get it, do you, Jean-Luc? You see, of all the species, yours cannot abide stagnation. Change is at the heart of what you are. That is the exploration that awaits you. Not mapping stars and studying nebula, but charting the unknown possibilities of existence.
So, the arms deal part of this episode was intentionally meant to be very reflective of the Iran-Contra scandal.
I was going to say it was about that around that time when Reagan was in office, if I remember correctly. Wasn't it 87, late 80s?
So, yeah, right. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, this was, for the kids, this was Reagan got caught selling arms to two different groups on the down low. First to Iran against an arms embargo that was in effect against them, hoping to influence Iran to get Hezbollah to release some hostages that they were holding, and to the Contra rebels in Nicaragua against a congressional ban against supporting the Contra rebels in Nicaragua. And they got fucking busted.
Mm.
and looked really bad doing it, because all this time Reagan was also saying, nope, we should definitely not support Iran, and we definitely shouldn't. And then he got busted doing the thing. This is the projection of the right, and they do this all the time. Oh, we have to stop these people from doing this thing when they're the people doing the thing.
Yeah, that's total projection.
Yep. More broadly, though, this episode made me think about aging, and lately I've been feeling some type of way about my own aging.
Mm-hmm.
This midlife funk, it's not a crisis yet. I don't think I'll call it a funk. It started with feelings of irrelevance, and I'm not sure that's the right word for it. I'm still working through my feelings about it, but in a lot of ways, I feel like I've peaked.
Yeah,
and a lot of that feeling is work related, as we've talked, before. Like, I look back at all the things in my life that I've done, and I've done this wild variety of different things, and I never really found my thing. And I still struggle with that. And like, recognizing as I'm learning this new role that I've taken on at work now, I don't think there are any more reinvent myself left in the chamber. This is it. I don't think I could start over again with something new.
You would be surprised. What you're feeling right now, I felt the same when I was in my 40s, and like, who am I? What does it all mean? What have I done with my life? Is this all I'm gonna do?
Right. Yeah.
And then it's cyclical, give it few years, just live your life. Don't let those feelings like get to you so much that it changes you.
Right.
Just acknowledge them, and then but still do your thing, because you will find something that life happens, and things are going to come into your life you don't know yet. 5 years from now, you have no idea where you'll be or what you'll be doing, and it'll be like, and you'll look back at this moment and think, man, I'm glad I didn't give up, because in 5 years you might be exactly where you want to be.
Yeah. Well, I think, a lot of the right now is very much like around my identity, which is defined by capitalism. And so my identity is defined as what I do for work. Right.
Oh, yeah.
And so I definitely feel like I'm just grinding, trying to survive. And deep down, I know, and this is the problem, I know that there are more important things in life than what I'm doing for work.
Yeah.
Right. It's family and relationships and community and helping others and all of those things.
But for survival, yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I'm not doing those things that I know fulfill me and are the secret sauce of life's happiness, the family and community and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
That I'm not getting enough of that because of this capitalist bullshit.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to say, well, just, do things that make you happy, but some that shit doesn't pay the bills.
Right.
And so it's more, it's partly about you and what you're feeling inside, but it's also partly about like what's going on. And
yeah.
I feel that too.
And it's all going to shit right now, generally. So there's that on top of all of it. Yeah.
But I get that feeling of irrelevance too. As a woman, as you get older, nobody notices you. Nobody cares about it's all about society is catering to a certain age.
Right.
Everyone's catering to a certain age, and nobody cares about you. Society doesn't care about you. And then you're also starting to basically plan your death.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, at some point, I'm now calculating how long I've got until I retire. And then I think, am I going to make it? Will I? And if I do, will I be able to survive?
Right. Yeah. Well, I have said before, this is true for me, and I know it'll be true for my kids unless one of them becomes a fucking brain surgeon or whatever. There's not going to be a retirement. I haven't worked the kind of job where I've been building a retirement, and I haven't been paid enough where I can create a retirement fund on the side, not provided by an employer. And so, like, there's not going to be money for me to stop working, like, ever. It's just not going to be there. And the future generation, the younger generations have it worse. Like, I think a lot about my kids are never going to be able to own a home. Are you kidding me?
No,
Like-
not with the salary, the median, what the median salary is going to be, and then
and the
price
cost of everything
a house.
going up. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Right. So anyway, I very much understand like Mark's reverie for the good old days, flying around the galaxy, saving lives, making a difference. And now he feels like he's stuck, not just in that way, but also with this physical disability.
Mm.
And he's feeling very irrelevant all the way around. And sometimes that leads us to do drastic things.
But also he's trying to fix something. He's feeling this guilt. Like imagine
Mhm.
carrying guilt for 45 years of something. Because
Yeah.
I mean, his actions cause millions of people to die, and he can't fix it because those people are dead.
He's trying to ease his mind, I think. He's trying to do
Yeah.
something that like will stop this constant guilt from bearing down on him.
And he says he was there to save lives, but it really was about him. It was about him making himself feel better, because what's done is done, and what he should be doing is owning up to it, not being so secretive, and going to Karnak and saying, "I'm sorry, I did this." Karnak was doing what Karnak always did. You know what I mean? And he's also trying to survive on his planet. But I think Jameson should have gone in and said, "You know what? I caused this, and I'm sorry."
So this is another fucking white whale Ahab story, which we've done a lot in Star Trek, but this one has like double layers because the seeking of revenge is what really kicked off that 40-year war. Like it was aided by "Give me weapons," but it was really Karnak that instigated that war for revenge over his father's assassination.
Yeah.
And then now he's holding this revenge. He's not taking any responsibility for anything that's happened. The first inciting incident was my dad was assassinated, and that wasn't his fault. And so then to get back at these fucking, it's the, oh God, what were the families? The Capulets and the Montagues, right.
No, but what was the family in the U.S. out in the West? It was the
the Hatfields and McCoys.
Yeah, McCoys and Hatfields.
Yeah, so these two families hate each other like that, and so he asks for weapons to get revenge, and then he gets the weapons, and he kicks off this war. He wages war on these people and does not take responsibility for it, but instead leans hard into revenge again. I'm gonna get this asshole back for going along with my idea, but giving weapons to the other side.
Yeah, if had Jameson not given weapons to the other side,
Yep,
he would have been enabling Karnak to wipe them off the face of that planet.
Yeah.
Is that right too? So, I mean, I get why Jameson did it, but it's still not right, and it was an impossible situation. But like, it's hard to say what would have happened if he had done the other thing.
Right.
but he is directly now responsible for that 45-year war.
And it makes you think about like the U.S. gives lots of people weapons, and is it right? Are the reasons we use to justify it, that it's in the interest of our national security or whatever the bullshit they give? We're trying to do this to get that. Is it worth it? Are we doing the right thing?
I wish we could stay out of shit, but then we get into shit, and sometimes we make it worse. Like this is what we do is we get involved, and we sometimes make it worse for the people that we're trying to help. As opposed to, the Middle East, we've been occupying some of their cities and stuff for ages, and they hate us.
Yeah.
They hate us.
The last thing I thought about was Anne and how she feels as her life's partner is struggling with all of this and unable to communicate with her about it. Like, I try to talk about my depression and anxiety and shit with Becca, but it makes me think about my own situation from her perspective too, like how she feels about my midlife funk and how that relates to our relationship. Like, I'm satisfied in that part of my life, and that doesn't connect in any way to these general feelings of like, I don't know, remorse or regret that I didn't check the boxes. I didn't do the things that I'd hoped to do in life. Like, I'm not truly living. I'm surviving, not thriving.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's deeply reflected in the relationship between Anne and Mark as well.
Yeah.
Well, it's time to honor the dead.
I'm so glad someone died.
Couldn't happen to a better guy.
Jameson died. I wrote a rhyme about it. You want to hear it?
Mm-hmm.
Here it goes.
We're here together to honor our friend and comrade. We will all find time to grieve for her in the days that are ahead. But for now, she has asked that we celebrate her life with this.
Yo, Admiral Jameson, running from age. Pop that dose, trying to turn back the page. Fountain of youth, but the cost ran steep. Body broke down, now he's 6 feet deep. Thought he could fix what he did in the past. Fast lane living, but he crashed too fast. Played with time, but time don't play. Now he's just memories in the Starfleet story.
I love that. That's the best one yet.
I was like, yay, I get to write a rhyme. No, it's funny.
It's been a while, huh?
We murdered so many people in TOS,
Yeah.
and I've probably done maybe two rhymes this entire season.
Yeah.
We can handle all the pleasantries later. Now, let's get down to business.
I am willing to pay handsomely for you. I think you've had a little too much to drink.
Now, what do you know about my money?
Your money.
The money he stole!
You stole his money?
Those vouchers I gave you were every bit as good as Latinum.
You can spend Latinum almost anywhere. Those vouchers are only good at your bar.
As always, we want to thank all of the patrons who support the show. We want to thank everybody for listening and supporting the show. We especially want to thank our founding admirals. A special thanks to Russell, Allie, Peter, Sarah, Sherry, and Bruce. And this week, Allie, we have a new recruit joining the USS Humanist Trek in CC 42069-D. Welcome aboard, new patron, Lieutenant Michael Kolakowski.
Welcome, Michael.
I believe this is the Michael from Nebraska who wrote in asking if we were going to be revisiting Nebraska. And so by the time this comes out, we will have hopefully
we will have met you and talked to you.
Hung out with him, at QuadCon. So thank you for being a supporter of the show, and thanks to everybody who supports Humanist Trek.
Captain, Starfleet Academy is requesting an update on our estimated arrival.
Finalists, please take your seats.
I must admit you have a very fast mind. Once I realized it was a trick question, there was only one answer.
Although only one student will be chosen for the Academy, any of you could easily qualify. Candidates, good luck.
You got called to the superintendent's office. It's a story I'd like to hear.
All right, Becca's back now with the answer to this week's Starfleet Academy Cadet Challenge for too short a season. Remind us, though, the question.
How much did Admiral Jameson's state-of-the-art 24th century wheelchair cost the prop department?
Allie said $50,000. Sarah said $20,000. Price is Right rules. What's the answer?
The Admiral is definitely incorrect.
What? We're both over?
Yep.
Damn.
Cost $10,000.
Ah.
And it didn't even move well enough to be anything more than a hindrance.
Yeah, I read that it was just a
Bowman
piece of shit.
had to just shoot around it. Prop master Joe Longo referred to the wheelchair as a big albatross.
Yep.
That's why Jameson was always getting out of it. He's like, fuck this thing.
All right, well, next week, we'll be reviewing Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 1, Episode 17, When the Bow Breaks.
When the bow breaks, the cradle will fall.
Wesley and several other children from the Enterprise are kidnapped by a sterile civilization which hopes to use them to rebuild their race. I do remember this episode. What do you remember about this one, Allie?
Yeah, they steal some kids. Wesley leads the rebellion. And
Yeah. They're like, if I remember right, this civilization is like, you're going to be an artist. And so we're going to teach you to be an artist. And you're going to be a musician. Like, you don't get to choose your own path.
Right.
I think. Or they make them explore all the, I don't know. Now I'm
No,
second
I
guessing
think they
myself
did make
now.
them choose. They're like, this is what you're going to be.
Okay.
And they're infertile, so they're going to steal someone else's kids. And because those other people, well, you can have more kids. We can't.
Right.
So
Yes.
we have the right to take your children.
Okay, we pretty well remember this one. What's the question? It has nothing to do with anything that we remember about this episode.
Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to Wesley, there were 6 children in this episode. How many of them are real-life siblings to Will Wheaton?
Ooh.
1.
Oh, you think so?
I think he only had a sister.
Fuck,
I think he only has a sister.
I was gonna say.
And I don't know
2.
where I'm pulling this out of, but I think that is.
Huh.
I don't know. I'm gonna say 1.
All right, Allie says 1. Sarah says 2. And next time we'll find out. And if you'd like to play along, get your siblings together on a social media platform and share this episode using the hashtag Starfleet Challenge. Share your answer. We'll pick out a winner. And next time we'll review Star Trek The Next Generation Season 1, Episode 17, When the Bow Breaks.
Glory to your house!
Make it so, number 1.
Humanist Trek is available wherever you replicate your podcasts. Follow us on all the social medias at Humanist Trek. Become a patron at patreon.com/humanisttrek. Open hailing frequencies to podcast@humanisttrek.com and visit our website, humanisttrek.com. Humanist Trek is a production of Sarah Austin Media.